story that might catch you off guard. After the Fath of Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ was traveling back from Jirana. And when the Prophet ﷺ was traveling back, there was a place that they stopped the caravan in order to perform prayer. And so he had asked one of the companions to call the Adhan, and one of these companions began to call the Adhan. Now, after the conquest of Mecca had happened, the Muslims were in a very peculiar situation because there were many people from Mecca who had either just become Muslim and their Islam was still maturing, or there were people who were not yet Muslim, but they had politically conceded to the Muslims, meaning that the Muslims are now the ones who are in charge of Mecca, of our city. In this moment, when the Adhan was being given in the middle of the desert, on a trip back, there was a group of young boys, and they were from the second category. They were not yet Muslim, but they were part now of the community. They were companions of the Muslims in this journey. And when they heard the Adhan, they were young, they were like 10 years old. They did what you would expect children to do. They started to call the Adhan themselves, but they did it in a way that was actually in a form of mockery. And so there were about 10 of them, but there was one in particular who his name was Abu Mahdhura. And Abu Mahdhura, his actual name was Aus bin Ma'yar bin Lawzan al-Jumahi. And what was different about him, in that when he was repeating and sort of mocking the Adhan, is that even in his mockery, even in his joking, his voice was very beautiful. So the Prophet ﷺ, he hears this and he looks at all of these children that are making fun of the Adhan, which is a very, horrible thing to do. But he sees one of them has a particularly nice voice. So he calls that young boy over, Abu Mahdhura. He says, come over here. So all of a sudden they all stop, of course, because when kids get in trouble, they act like they didn't do anything. He calls this young boy over and he says to him, can you repeat what you said? I want to hear your voice. And he became shy. So the Prophet ﷺ, he gave him actually some money. He took out some money and he gave him a small bag of coins. He said, this is for you. Can I please ask you, can you repeat the Adhan? Can you repeat after me? And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And Abu Mahdhura started to repeat, but he still did it very quietly. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. He was very shy. So the Prophet ﷺ, he repeated, no, say it again after me. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, until he got this young boy to call the Adhan with his beautiful voice. And he could tell, the Prophet ﷺ could tell, that he was hesitant because he still was not Muslim. He didn't want to concede, he didn't want to join the Muslims, but there was something just so charming about the Messenger ﷺ, so magnetic that even people who weren't Muslim, they felt compelled to respond to his request, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the Prophet ﷺ, he felt this hesitation, and he took his hand, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he ran his fingers through the hair of this young boy. And then he placed his hand, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on the chest of this young boy, and he said, oh Allah, give him hidayah. Oh Allah, guide his heart. Guide his heart. Abu Mahdhura then departed, and they did their prayer, and then they went back to Mecca. When they got to Mecca and they had settled, they were preparing for prayer in the Haram. And of course, this is the Kaaba. This is the most important masjid on the face of the earth. And so the Prophet ﷺ and everybody, they're looking for a muezzin to come and call the Adhan so that people will come for prayer. All the companions, they start to look around. Where is this? Where is this person? Where is Bilal? Where is so-and-so? Get them to call the Adhan. The Prophet ﷺ says, hold on. There's someone I have in mind. Where is Abu Mahdhura? They go and they find this young boy. And he comes, and his personality now is different. Something changed. Before he was hesitant, now he's a little bit more excited. The Prophet ﷺ says, can you please call the Adhan for us? And he does. Later, much later, when Abu Mahdhura is narrating this whole story to us, he's much older in his life. He was asked about how he came to Islam, and he told this whole story. I was a young boy, I didn't want to, I was mocking the Adhan, he called me over, he gave me some coins. But then when he gets to the point where his heart turned, he says something very interesting. He says, the Prophet ﷺ ran his fingers through my hair, placed his hand on my chest and made dua for me, and when he did that, he went from being the person that I didn't want to be next to all of a sudden becoming the person that I couldn't see myself being away from. My heart yearned for him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He went from being the most hated to the most beloved. And that's when I became a Muslim. And he said, as proof of my love for that moment in my life, he grabbed his hair as an adult And he said, I have never ever cut this piece of hair from my head because this is the hair that he touched. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Support Hidayah with a subscribe and share, cause every share is your sadaqah jariyah.